It is 6 o'clock, and I call this special meeting of the Commerce City Council to order. We have several things to discuss tonight. Mr. City Manager, would you guide us through that?
Believe we were going to open up with opportunity for public comment from the public, but then we can get into the projects and have comments at any time. So it's however you want to proceed with that, Mayor.
Since I have no agenda, I don't mind.
It's public comments and talk about the CIP. That's the only thing on the agenda.
All right, let's hear public comments. Please come forward and state your name and address, and so we'll know who you are.
Carolyn Trezevant, 2510 Washington. I would like to express my concern about Washington Street, especially the 2500 block right in front of my house. We have been down this road before of installing sidewalks. I appeared before City Council, whenever that was, and of course it would basically, to make ADA compliant sidewalks, to retrofit the street with ADA compliant sidewalks, would put the sidewalks pretty much on my front porch. So I humbly ask that we not even consider retrofitting the 2500 block of Washington with ADA compliant sidewalks. And yes, it desperately needs to be resurfaced, but the primary problem is the patches from Atmos over the last several years. And there also is a sewer line down the middle of the street. And when they did the last one, what was that, a couple of years ago, Atmos pours, well, first they had to patch a leak in the water line, and then when they covered their work, the gas lines, they laid concrete and then asphalt on top of that. So dealing with that particular block of Washington would be very expensive. Though it needs attention, people still fly by like there are no bumps in the street. Some do, some don't.
De facto speed hump.
Pardon? Yeah, we have we have several speed bumps, and people just
In front of every house.
I'm sorry?
In front of every house.
In front of every house, yes. So, some are higher than others. So that's my concern, is about Washington Street. And I want to thank you all for your service to the community. I know it takes a ton of time, and I think you all have your minds and hearts in the right place. So thank you for your service.
Well,
And
thank you.
kick Washington Street kick that can down the road. We've been here before.
We know how to kick. we practiced.
I've noticed. Thank you very much.
Any other comments?
So my name is Brett Scroggins. I live at 2626 Washington. I have talked to y'all via Skype before about the flooding on Washington Street. I have emailed the mayor, every city council member. I tried calling you last week, you didn't respond. I know there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done in the city. Anytime I contact the city about my street, I get told it's always been that way. Well, that's not good enough. When I get dressed in the morning, when it rains, I have to get dressed in my car. I have to put my shoes on in my car because the street has been overlaid so many times. I've met with the city engineer. I've tried all kinds of stuff. And I'm really nervous, but sorry. I don't know what else to do. I know, me personally, I have 2 young kids. Greenville's only 20 minutes away. I work in Greenville. I don't see the need to spend $1 million on a splash pad when we have streets that flood all the time. Those get used every single day. A splash pad is only going to get used a few months out of the year. I watched the whole last meeting, all the way till 8:30. I'm sure y'all will go over some more stuff. I'm just gonna try to touch on everything real quick. The animal shelter, I do agree that we need a new one, but if we don't have the commitment right now from the county on us spending the more money on building a bigger one, then I don't think we need to approve that right now. We could spend that money on some of these streets. You told me we don't have it in the budget for these streets to fix the drainage. But then we got $6.5 million and we want to build splash pads or restrooms downtown or a new sidewalk. When are we going to fix the drainage? When the city manager come out, or not the manager, the engineer, right in front of my house, the road is like 4 inches higher than my curb. The water has nowhere to go except my yard. I've spent thousands of dollars on repairs. And I don't, I'm just at a loss. I don't understand how everybody can live here. I know y'all drive down these streets. I know y'all have seen it. I've only been here 6.5 years. It's happened every time it's rained. I've just now finally got the courage to come up here and say enough's enough. You know, I want to raise my kids here. I don't want to move anywhere else. But as a taxpayer, as a citizen, you know, I don't think I should have to dread every time it's raining when I live in the middle of town. You know, we're talking about redoing Monroe, which is right on the other side of me. But all you're doing is replacing a street with the same thing that's there. We're not addressing any other issues anywhere. That water runs down Cowan. I live on the corner. Runs down Cowan. Cowan's messed up because Washington's messed up. So that water doesn't flow properly. And when it does, it goes right across the street into my yard. The city engineers met with Howdy, told him everything that needs to be done. The response was, it's not in the budget. Well, I don't know why a splash pad is going to be in the budget. I don't know why a new animal shelter is going to be in the budget. We've got problems that's lasted years. Those need to be addressed first. You know, that's used every day. Thousands of people drive down that street every day, live on the other side of Washington. And that's all I really got. I'm just frustrated.
Is that south of Culver?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's over there by Tanglewood. You go
Okay,
that side of Culver.
okay.
And I'm assuming, when I met with the engineer, he said the water runs from Culver down this way. Cowan runs into Washington. All these other streets run into Washington, but Washington's just been overlaid and overlaid and overlaid. And when I contacted the insurance, city insurance, they told me I had to prove that it was man-made, that the city did something for the insurance to claim. Well, now I found that out. The engineer told me it's been overlaid. I mean, it's 4 or 5 inches taller than my curb in front of my house. My car scrapes every time I pull in my driveway. And it's just, you know, I really wish that would be addressed at some point. I'm just really frustrated, and I know y'all work hard. There's lots of things that need to go on, but when I contact I started at the very bottom of this. I contacted the public works guy. Then I contacted his boss. Then I contacted his boss. I've contacted the intern manager that was right before Howdy. And then, you know, I don't know what else to do. I mean, I don't feel it's right that, you know, that whole side, it just floods and it just gets ignored. And I'm just afraid that, I know I heard you say last meeting, there was a street, you said just kind of scrape it down and put back over it. Well, that's what's happened to Washington several times, and now it floods because there's no drainage, it's just the curbs to keep the water going. Well, you just add street, the water has got to go somewhere. It goes into my house, it goes into my neighbor's house, it just sits on the street, creates puddles, creates problems. We got to have a better solution than that. And that's all I've really got. Thank y'all.
Appreciate you coming
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you, Brett. I will say, when Brett and I first met and we discussed this, you've got two different budgets that we've been discussing. When I got here, we were operating with an operating budget that had been adopted the year previously. And I did meet with the engineers. We did the engineering work to see what needs to happen for that intersection. That particular intersection, we could probably address for $30,000. At that time in my operating budget,
Yeah.
I didn't have $30,000 that I could spend on that.
Okay.
We're now talking about the new budget moving forward, and so there is funding available that wasn't there when we spoke.
Yeah.
And so there's two different budgets. But we did some engineering on that intersection. You could do some improvements there for probably $30,000 that would improve the intersection of Washington and Cowan.
Yeah.
And that could be incorporated into one of these projects pretty easily.
And which, can I state that that's kind of just putting a little Band-Aid on there?
Yeah,
The engineer told me the whole street from the top all the way to the bottom needs completely redone.
the final solution is to
Yeah.
completely redesign Washington all the way down to the end.
And it's just because of all the overlays.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pull right in front of my house, get out and look, and you can see every overlay.
Yeah.
Right from my curb.
And the overlay we talked about last time and in this budget has been a mill to cut it down and then overlay. In the
Yeah.
past, they just laid new on top of old,
Yeah.
which is an ineffective method. So,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
I mean, that's just my whole thing is, if we replace stuff with what's already there, we're not actually solving any issues.
Exactly.
And that's my whole thing on the entire thing.
So what was that address again?
2626 Washington Street.
Yeah.
I will gladly meet you there anytime you want. I've emailed every council member. Y'all got
I
pictures
know,
and videos.
I actually
Of
was
my
looking in
street.
the wrong block.
Yeah,
I thought it was north,
Here,
so 2606?
I'll pull it up.
2626.
26.
I've actually emailed last year when I had all these issues, pictures and videos on the city website to all the members, the email that's listed on there. I never heard a response from anybody, so.
What you'll see is water drains from two directions. First, it comes south down Washington where it turns off of Culver, comes down Washington. It'll flow on both sides of the curb line, but as Mr. Scroggins has mentioned, numerous overlays, they never milled it down. They just overlaid, and so they've actually filled in the gutter with chip seal and asphalt. But then when the intersection with Cowan and Washington was originally done, there was a gutter to allow water to come through, and then water that flows to the east down Cowan could hit that gutter, turn to the south. Well, through the years of overlay, they've filled in that gutter. And so there is no gutter anymore, and so if you have enough rain, it comes down Cowan, straight across Washington, and right into Mr. Scroggins' yard and in his driveway.
Brad, is it your neighbor to the south that gets water in his house too?
Okay, so I've tried to reach out to a lot of people, and all I ever hear is, it's just always been this way. I don't want to go up there. It's always been this way. That intersection right there, if you look right, so that's my house is the one right there. That's
Yeah.
my house.
Yeah.
So that intersection right there, right across the street, the water just stays there on Cowan and Washington, right on that right there. If you, yeah, that's right there. You can see right there, and I mean the whole rest of the street's dry, and so
The curb lines do not drain as
At
they
all.
initially.
but that's what I'm saying. Anytime I reach out, that's all I ever hear, and I mean, that's fine. You could tell everybody else that. I mean, if I have to be the guy that's here every day, every meeting, asking for it, I want my kids to stay here. I want to stay here. I don't want to have to put my clothes on in my car because when I go to get, walk outside, that's not right.
And so you can see where there used to be the gutter through that intersection that has been overlaid. And so working with our engineer, we looked at some preliminary designs to cut out this portion of the intersection and relay a new gutter line. And it would improve the situation at this intersection, but because of the water flowing all the way, the rest of the way down Washington, ultimately, the solution is gonna have to be to mill down Washington and overlay, and repair portions of the curb that are no longer at the correct grade. But it comes across, hits this curb in front of his home, and then it backs up and then just goes right down his driveway and into his garage.
And it goes over my sidewalk
Yeah.
too. It floods my whole yard. It's not just into my garage. Like, you can't use my sidewalk. You can't use nothing in the front of my house. And I mean, I just spent like 20,000 on foundation on just that side of my house where all that water sits. And they told me I'm gonna have to keep doing that until something else changes. And you know, so I can't do anything on my property, because if I divert the water behind my house, you know, with like French drains or something, then I'm gonna flood out the people behind my house, and then I'm responsible for their house because I diverted the water. You know, I mean, there's only one solution for me, and that's to come up here and ask that at some point we start trying to work on what we have, you know, before we start building new things. You said that we're getting a new subdivision, or possibly getting a new subdivision, but I mean, I don't know where it's gonna be at, but if it rains, you know, before they start working on it, and they go down Washington Street, and you know, all their cars are filled with water, you know, water's everywhere, they're gonna be like, whoa, what is this? You see what I'm saying? Like, I agree, there's a lot of things that need to be done, but streets are used every single day. And that's one of the major things. Fire trucks, when it's raining, they need to get down through there. Cops, when it's raining, they need to get down through there. They can't hurry up and get down Washington Street if it's raining on my side. There's water everywhere.
And the CIP that we've put in front of council has $8 to $10 million on streets over the next 4 years. But there's a laundry list of issues across the entire community.
Yeah.
And so it's been our proposal to tackle streets and some of these other issues in a reasonable manner. But I agree, we've got stormwater issues everywhere in this community that they've never paid attention to, and we have to start somewhere.
And that's why I'm here, is, you know, for the people that are tired of, it's just, that's how it's been, you know. I'm not okay with that, you know. Something can be done.
Yes,
It might not be the nicest thing or the fanciest thing, but you know what? Streets we use every day. Like I said, splash pads. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to have one.
Yeah.
My kids would love it. But they'd also love to be able to, say, play outside in the rain. You
Sure.
can't. Y'all can check your emails on my videos. It floods my backyard. I have water this deep in my backyard. There's no way we can do anything. And that's really all I've got. And also, can y'all please email your citizens back? That would mean a lot to me and everybody else when we reach out with problems, not to be ignored. It feels like we're just kicked to the side. So,
We'll see what we can do.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
I will say, I'm not big on email, but I'm not hard to find.
Well, and so like I said, I've lived here 6.5 years, but my wife is a stay-at-home mom. We just actually put our kids back in Commerce, and you know, so I'm usually, if I'm not at work, I'm at home with my kids. You know what I'm saying? So the only thing I know to do, I contacted lawyers and stuff, and they told me there's so many laws that protect the city. Like, I can't sue y'all unless I go through, you know, it costs me more to sue than anything. But he said, you know, reach out to them, email them, go to city council meetings. So that's what I'm doing. You know, I emailed all y'all. What was it, November was the last time I did it via Skype. You know, I still never heard back emails. I'll let y'all know I emailed y'all then too. You know, that's just, you know, if it's gonna be on the website for us to contact y'all with, at some point, you know, 10 months, and within 10 months, it should, you know, I should have heard something back. The way I look at it, I mean, y'all signed up to, you know, take care of the city and the citizens. I don't have your personal number, I don't have yours, I don't have your address, I don't have yours, I don't have yours, I don't have anybody's. It's the only way I had to that's the only way I had to contact you, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I get there's no, I don't do emails, my wife is the one that sent them. But, you know, I ask her every day, hey, did anybody email you back? Anybody email you back? Nope, nothing. For 10 months. You know, so that's just how I feel about it. I don't want to get involved in politics, you know, but hey, if that's what it takes for me to get stuff done, maybe I need to toss my name out there. I don't know.
Well, and,
But-
and as you and I have discussed, the city did spend about $6,000 on engineering to look
Yeah.
at that intersection, and so you have not fallen on deaf ears.
I know. It's just, like I said, you know, when you get called back, oh, it's not in the budget, and then I sit here and I'm looking on Facebook and stuff, and now y'all are, that's good. I love that y'all are doing that. Putting all the information out on Facebook makes it a lot easier. And then it's got all these deals about streets and everything, and I go and look, and there's no, I think one person mentioned something about drainage last meeting, but it was on the street by the college, because where the road, I guess, stops, and y'all were gonna stop there again. It's the only time anybody say anything about water, drainage, or anything.
Well, when we talked about Monroe south of Culver, there's actually two prices that is in the packet. One price is to replace what's there with what's there, which nobody is proposing to do.
Yeah.
There's a second price that's like $3.3 million, which would include all of the necessary drainage, because some of the water that flows down Cowan is because Monroe doesn't flow correctly.
Which I
and
mean,
so-
I understand that, but then you say the college owns that lot right there in between Brookshire's and Monroe?
Yes.
Okay, so you look at it from my standpoint, it's, the citizens are right here, our street's not in the budget. You got this multi-million-dollar college over here, their street's in the budget.
But it has
But I'm just saying, I'm just letting you know from how I look at it.
Sure.
You know, they got millions and millions of dollars. They got colleges all over.
Yeah.
They can pitch in and help with that. I can't pitch in millions of dollars.
Sure.
I work day in and
But-
day out just to provide for my family.
I understand, but some of the water issue you have
But not much.
is included in what we would do with Monroe.
Yeah.
And many of the people that are down Monroe and down Washington, we've got to tackle this drainage problem in phases.
I understand
And-
it. I'm just letting you know how it looks from my point of view. Y'all
Sure.
were talking about the college, and then I hear the college owns Monroe. Well, Monroe is in the proposal. Washington, my whole street was not in any of it. You know, the intersection, you know, we had talked about it.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting at home looking and listening, and you say it doesn't fall on deaf ears, but it's not mentioned. But we got this street where the college owns a big field next to it. Yeah, let's go ahead and work on that one first. That's just how it feels to a citizen.
Sure, understand.
I understand there's lots of politics to go on everywhere, but I'm just letting you know from my standpoint how I feel about that.
Yes, sir.
Brad, we appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I am very well aware of your emails. I drive by your house almost daily,
Yeah,
especially when it's raining,
yeah,
and I watch it. I also go south of your house down to Charity, where it really gets bad.
yeah.
You know, we got serious drainage problems. We've got things that were done wrong 40 years ago. We got problems with our university creating more drainage to the south part of town. We've got lots of things to work on.
I agree.
Tonight, we've got to make some decisions. We're not going to ignore your situation. I don't know if what has been proposed is going to solve your problem. That's what I worry about.
It's not.
And you know,
I took screenshots of I pulled up the maps on everything that we're working, you know, looking at.
we got to spend money according to traffic counts. That's what we have to look at. What streets are most used by the most citizens,
Okay.
you included.
Can I,
And you know, it's a tough decision.
yeah,
but-
can I ask what my traffic count for that side of Washington Street is?
I don't have
Probably
it, but
pretty
we can
high.
get it.
We didn't collect traffic counts on that section of Washington.
So,
And-
but
and-
that's my whole point of being here, you know?
Sure.
Well, but if you look at all the miles of traffic lane that we have, and you're evaluating the roads that are in the worst shape and the drainage that has the worst problems and the traffic that is the highest volumes, that list is $60 million long.
I understand that. They did that in 2011, didn't y'all?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why I'm here. I mean, I didn't know about that. When I brought up my issues, the engineer told me about it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Yeah, they know. We've brought it up. We've done the whole city. You know." So that's. I mean, that's. I'm just frustrated. I'm just.
We understand. Appreciate you coming tonight.
Yeah, I'll be here all night.
All right.
All right. So
Proceed.
we are going to start our conversation back on streets. I have some additional information from when the engineer presented last time. I'm going to skip through many of these slides and get to the costing. All right, so the reconstruction costs, some of these numbers are replace what's there with what's there, and as we discussed last week, in most cases that's really not an effective strategy, but we had to start the evaluation somewhere. Then as we fine tune and identify projects, we'll do additional design. Last week we basically talked about taking Bonham off of the table from discussion. Sycamore at some point will need to be done. Washington from Live Oak to Culver is something that we talked about. Hickory is a project that will happen. We're already working with the engineer on that one. And then the sections of Monroe south of Culver all the way down to Charity. We had talked about Charity from Highway 24 back into Monroe. That's a project that probably is not time to move on. We did get more information on Monroe, Culver, all the way south to Charity, full reconstruction with curb and gutter and the appropriate stormwater drainage. That was a $3.3 million project. And so we had also, Stephanie, you asked about the section of Monroe, basically from Walnut down to Culver, that was not part of one of those prior year projects. To use the existing curb and gutter that's there, do a mill and overlay, which would be to cut it down, build back up to the correct elevations for stormwater flows. That's a $450,000 project. And that's the new information that the engineers put together since our last meeting.
No sidewalks.
No sidewalks.
Yeah.
And I've already driven down there. We have sidewalks except for the very last block from going toward Culver Street. So, I mean, there's existing sidewalks there.
So, but some of what we need to kind of talk through for this evening is before we can really talk about what we want to do for parks, what we want to do for the downtown area, we needed to set kind of what is our first project or projects to happen in this first year. We've got $1.5 million from a prior year funding, and we had put $1,250,000 in this year. So that gives us $2,750,000 for street projects in this first phase, with subsequent years continuing to take $1.5 million to $2.5 million bites at a time over the next 4 years. Clearly, if you wanted to tackle a project like Monroe, that's more than the $2,750,000. So we would have to reduce our spend somewhere else in order to accomplish that. If you wanted to tackle more than $2,750,000, we've got $6 million on the table. If you wanted to throw all $6 million at streets, we could do that. But you're not gonna get $6 million worth of construction in 12 to 18 months. And so it's our recommendation that we start design on multiple projects, and then actually perform construction in a manner that civil contractors from this region can handle. There's a tremendous amount of civil traffic construction happening on the southern end of Hunt County, and getting contractors to leave those jobs to come do a small job up here is going to be challenging, and could drive our pricing up. But there's contractors that can do the work. The contractor that did our airport project is very interested in doing projects for us. It's my concern and it's my assertion. If you tell me to spend $6 million on streets, it's going to take me 3 years to spend $6 million on streets, because there's just not enough contractors to do all that work in one shot. But I could be wrong.
So how much money can we physically take care of this year? I mean,
The plan that has been presented is $2,750,000.
okay,
And so you've got some reconstruction projects, then there's also the additional maintenance projects. We had talked about crack seal of Monroe along the edge of the university. Again, that's a good road. If we spend $55,000 on it right now,
That
it
keeps it.
continues to be a good road.
right,
If we ignore it and look up in 3 years, it's not a good road anymore, and that $55,000 becomes $200,000. And so it's our recommendation that we do some of this maintenance work, as well as some of the reconstruction work that has been put on the table.
okay, so you're talking about, you suggest how much on the maintenance, how much of that, if you go back to the maintenance, we have three items on there?
$55,000 would be a crack seal
Mhm.
on Park from Maple Street through Aldridge all the way down to Culver. That would be, again, a mill and overlay, where they'd mill it down, correct some of the curb and gutter, because there's a number of places through there where the curb and gutter has been busted and the stormwater flow elevations are wrong. So they'd replace curb and gutter, mill and overlay with a new surface, and they would improve the dips where Park crosses Aldridge. Those two projects combined for almost $800,000.
Okay, so that's 800 there. And so, and that would keep those roads, they're not, they're in the good category, but they're starting to fall down into the next category, so we've
Correct.
got to spend it to keep them up in the good.
Correct.
Okay, and so then we go to the other ones that we were talking about,
Reconstruction.
and we know that Hickory we've got to do,
Yes.
so that's there. And then, I guess then it's the next thing is, of those, how much of those can we handle for this next year?
Just the maintenance and Hickory, you're looking at $975,000. You've got $2,750,000. You'll need some of that money for design. So I would say you've probably got $1 million to $1.5 million left that you could allocate to projects.
What are you thinking?
The last thing I would say, because I really like to make the calculus even more complicated, is if you're going to put some of this money into our downtown area, right now the only decent way to get downtown is through Park Street. And I know Carolyn wasn't a fan of us doing anything with Washington, but the traffic studies show the northern stretch of Washington is another major traffic area. And so that would be a project that would amplify or improve how people get into the downtown area. And so that is a $1.1 million project. If you add sidewalks all the way down, that accelerates that cost to almost $2 million.
On Washington, are you talking about? And
We're not
and we're not
recommending-
gonna be able to do
Staff's
that.
not recommending sidewalks on
Yeah,
Washington.
we can't do that
We actually
because-
agree with Carolyn's point.
Yeah, because whenever you go down there, you're gonna have to move poles and everything else.
Yep.
As much as I would love to have them. You know, cause I feel like we should be able to walk without being in the street, but we can't afford it. Well, I
So,
talked last time, so y'all gotta talk.
on Park Street, is that Park Street from Aldridge to Culver? Is that taking that road down some because of the hump and the water going into?
Yes. All of these projects would not be a pure overlay. It would be what's called a mill and overlay, where they cut it down and then rebuild the elevation so that it is correct for all of the stormwater drainage. And that would go from Maple Street down to Culver Street.
And am I correct? Didn't we have Washington Street coming up fairly soon in the whole, in this $10 million amount of money that we're gonna spend over the next several years?
Well, we started with the list that's in front of you, looking at these segments because of traffic volumes and surface conditions. And so Washington's on that list, but we've never really, we haven't set the order in which we're gonna take them. That's the reason we're having these conversations.
Okay, I was thinking south of Culver, is that his area?
That was not in the first round of evaluations by our engineer.
But wasn't it a pretty high priority?
If we're looking at major transportation paths, yes, it is also a major transportation path. It has drainage issues, to Mr. Scroggins' point. I would not categorize it as our worst drainage issue, but it is, I mean, it is a problem, and we've evaluated what that solution would look like. But it's not the only problem, and so it was gonna be in our phase 2 of evaluations for projects.
So it looks like for the budget that we have, we could do the maintenance and the Washington Lavo
Yes.
to Culver.
And we could improve the intersection of Cowan and South Washington in front of Mr. Scroggins' house. That could be easily added to one of these projects. That buys us some time, but it is not the long-term solution.
What cost would that be to,
About $30,000.
about 30,000?
And believe me, I understand about water coming into your house. I have water running under my house because I live on Taylor Street. You have curbs. I have no curbs. They're buried a long time ago. And we need to make sure that if we spend that money on that section, that we realize that we still may be feeding it anyway because we haven't taken care of Monroe Street.
Agreed.
So I just want you to make sure that when we're working on that, that may not be the final solution. It may keep it out of the front yard. But that's my whole concern, because there's so much that we need to, when it starts going down that direction, one street is going to feed another street, and we've got to figure out which street's the best one that we need to start with.
Well, and I can find no evidence other than the study that was done in 2011 that we've ever really paid adequate attention to stormwater drainage.
Correct.
And so even the creeks in the areas that are the drainage ways, nobody's looked at the 100-year flood. Nobody's looked at the 150-year flood. They haven't even looked at the every other month rainfall event. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
So we're going to go with maintenance in the Washington Street?
That's for,
Is that what I hear? Plus
That's what I would recommend.
that's what I would say too.
Becky?
Agreed.
what I'll probably also do then is ask the engineer to start design of the next project, so that, because your street construction season is usually spring to fall, and you don't do asphalt construction outside of that time period. And so we can discuss it later, but if you have a sense of what you would like the next project to be, I can go ahead and tee that up and start design on it.
Well, I think Monroe needs to be the next one,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
If we get the drainage right on Monroe, it improves drainage in a lot of
Right.
other
A lot of
areas.
areas.
A lot of areas.
We're talking about Monroe
South,
Yeah,
to Charity.
Charity.
yeah, all the way down to Charity. Okay.
What's next?
All right, so those projects fit within the CIP as it was presented. So of the 6.5 million that we have allocated, there's still $2.5 million that we haven't settled on what the strategy is for how that gets expended. The discussion has been 1.5 million for parks and $1 million for the downtown area, or do you want 1.5 million in the downtown and $1 million for parks? Or do you want less money in those and more money in streets? That has kind of been the conversation. I'll start with looking at our downtown and tell you kind of what staff is thinking and has in mind. As we see more businesses move into the downtown area, we're going to continue to see a need for parking. Omega's is still working on getting transitioned into the downtown area. There's literally no parking in front of the building Omega's is moving into. And so this area back behind off Bonham Alley,
We're not seeing you.
oh, let me end the PowerPoint presentation. I knew what I was talking about. I just assumed y'all did too. Let me turn the satellite view off first because on this view, you can see some of the property lines. And so this property behind Bonham Alley, this is,
Is there any way we can get,
I have no idea.
We may have to look at the big one.
it's not on the big one.
There we go.
There it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
But that is horrible video quality. As I said, we need new monitors in here. Y'all can't even see the property lines, so I'm gonna go back. Can you see the property lines that are there? Vaguely?
Uh-uh.
Vaguely.
Very,
Vaguely,
very.
all right. Along the railroad track to the north edge of the property, and then coming down that little tree line along Huffman's to Bonham Alley, and then back over to Washington, that entire lot, all of that's owned by the city. The farmer's market currently meets seasonally under this little covered shed, but the city's getting marginal benefit from that property. And so what we were looking at is resurface this entire parking lot area. That would, again would be a mill it down, reclaim that, work it into the base, put a new asphalt surface on the top, and then enlarge the shelter or the cover that's there. It's not really a pavilion like you would think in terms of a round gazebo, but probably more similar to what we have at City Park, just different dimensions. And that could be used both for farmers market, but then also for other activities that happen in the downtown area. So that would provide adequate parking for any of the events and any of the businesses that need access in the downtown, and provide space for farmers market or any other events that need a cover from the weather. You had talked about downtown restrooms.
So, question,
Yes.
have we looked at, is that farmer's market pavilion in the best location that a farmer's market could be for visibility, access, and things like that. If we're
Probably-
gonna go through and redo everything, maybe we should look at it. And does it have electricity?
We would get electricity run to that. That would be part of that project. But in terms of visibility, this is the only property that the city owns in the downtown area that could be used for that. We would have to acquire additional property for that purpose.
Could
You
it,
know, in that parking lot.
could it be, more in line with the grassy area? So as you're driving down Main Street, you have Gerald's grassy area. Could it be in that line?
For
What if
visibility?
we enlarge it over to the right?
Yes.
Yeah, so are you talking about leaving that one there? And
No, that one,
you're-
that one would get torn out.
Okay, so
and-
not
and we would have-
enlarging that one,
No,
a new
that
one.
one's gonna be removed, and we would be able to put a new structure wherever on that footprint gives it visibility across that grassy
Okay.
area.
That was my question.
Yes.
Where's, Huffman's line?
Right
All right,
next to their
let
building.
me, if you're looking at the big screen,
Right on his building.
it's right along the edge of his building, and so,
Farmer's market's right here, the building's right here, so we can't go to the east that much
Well,
anyway.
but we could put it here because their line is actually right over here, way over here.
Yeah, it's
In
way
fact, it
over there.
actually goes
Right
out
there.
here and then moves
Right
around
in
this way,
area.
is the way it is on this
Right here?
thing. So moving it here is not gonna be a problem.
yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think what the discussion is remove that existing structure, maybe where that building ends is where the next one would start, and then stretch it back over into this area, and then you've got improved visibility across the grassy area. But from my really quick back of the napkin budget, $500,000 allows you to completely resurface this parking lot, put in a new structure with electricity, and probably even get bathrooms attached to that. And that gives you public bathrooms for any of the major events that happen in that area.
For $500,000 to do all that?
It's my guess right now, yes. I've done parking lots, this was a number of years ago, but I've done parking lots about that size.
I was just worried about the bathrooms, you know, because I know bathrooms cost a lot.
And no, I'm not talking about splash pads because of splash pads, but in most of the splash pads that I've done, we also installed restrooms.
Restrooms there. Yeah.
And you can get prefabbed restroom buildings like at your parks for $50,000 to $75,000. You just put a slab and some plumbing, they bring it and set it, and you're done.
Okay,
It's doable, but all of that would be part of the design.
okay.
Additionally, we still own this grassy area to the back side of the property. We're not proposing any improvements to that area right now, but that's still available for events and for things that we want to happen in the downtown area. If we were to put $1 million towards downtown, half of that money would be parking and opportunity for farmers market and other events. The rest of that funding would be used, we had talked about improvements to this grassy area. We've talked about improvements to the grassy knoll, the area that we currently own, but I'm primarily talking about sidewalks. You could put in kind of a stage area with electricity so that you have a space for concerts, other events that happen live. The goal being, we want to bring people to the downtown area to increase economic activity, bring up sales tax revenue, and improve the valuations of everything in our downtown. And so you could put in fabric covers like you see at some parks, whether it's a rectangular hip structure or it could be cells. All of those are easy to do. I've done them a number of times. You could put in some kind of small water feature in this grassy area. One of the things we're discussing right now has absolutely nothing to do with CIP, but in anticipation of the upcoming Christmas season. In the past, we've done the Christmas tree over here in some of these parking areas. It's old, it's in bad shape. We're looking at, and I've talked with Paul Voss with the Chamber, getting an improved Christmas tree and having a full Christmas tree lighting event and make it an official deal. Those are the kind of things you can do in this grassy area. We've got the electricity there. But again, the goal is you can improve some of the sidewalk surfaces around the perimeter of the square where there's safety and trip hazards. I would not want to wholesale replace sidewalks because as discussed in 2023, we have a chance of a TxDOT grant that would pay 80% of those costs. But we do have some safety issues and tripping hazards that could be resolved with some spot maintenance.
Okay, so how, we're talking about that green area. That's with the understanding some of that money is gonna be used to try to purchase that?
It would be my desire, it would be staff desire to try to acquire that property. For two reasons. One, then we can utilize it for the full downtown benefit. But then should a developer come in the future and have some kind of beneficial project, a new business, a new storefront, a new theater, the city has the ability to do some economic incentive agreements for that development and continue to see economic growth in our community.
Okay, so when we're talking about resurfacing some of the sidewalks, about how much are we gonna be using for that?
I don't know yet.
Don't know?
We'd have to,
My other
Further out.
concern is the lighting downtown, the light poles, if that's what you wanna call them. Some of them, I know that we've been taking them down as they've started to fall down. But I know that, now we're gonna have some areas that are just pretty bleak
Yeah.
there. So if we're gonna start thinking about redoing sidewalks, maybe we can think about what we need to do for redoing the lights.
yes, ma'am.
Could you replace could you replace the lights with, and be able to take them up at a later date and still use them?
I know we've recently done some electrical work in the downtown area because there were lights that weren't working, and some of that was due to fire damage. We've done some electrical work to correct some of that problem. What I don't know is the light fixtures that are here, if you can still get those
think
particular
we can.
lights.
I don't
And
think we
so
can.
the challenge is if I pull 3 lamps out and I put 3 lamps back, they're not gonna match.
Right.
And so you typically do all the lights or just spot repairs until you can fund all of the lights.
Yeah.
We have not put any pricing together on street lights at this time.
Well, that may be something for next year.
But I would also say, again, I'm speaking off the cuff here, if we're going after a TxDOT grant, a lot of that electricity is gonna be underneath the sidewalks anyway. I would probably make that part of that grant project so that we can get all the underground electricity and the conduits and all that stuff done at the same time we're doing all those projects, all the sidewalks.
So if this is 500,000, the resurface and the pavilion there, what is the estimation if you did do some kind of stage area here, the parasail, shades, and
I don't have any design estimates at this point in time, and just based on projects that I've done in other locations. If we had another $500,000 to spend in the downtown area, there's a number of things that we could do, but until I have a final design, I don't know. But you would see,
But we could put 500 there so
You-
that you could start on the
on the
design
side, that would be ample
and
to do
start
what-
doing
Yeah.
something
Kind of-
with
I
it.
know you could get some sidewalks, I know you could get some stage with electricity, I know you could get some coverage, you could probably get a small water feature, you could get all of that for the price we're talking.
We're talking about putting about $1 million downtown.
I personally have a hard time finding projects with more than $1 million unless you start cutting out sidewalk and replacing curb and gutter, and I think we should wait for TxDOT on that.
Should we set any money aside at some point so that we have the 20% matching funds for the TxDOT?
I
That's
think we
2
should,
years.
but it would come out of fund balance or something cash on hand. We're financing some of these projects, and I don't want to pay interest on cash that's just sitting off
Okay.
on the side somewhere.
plan for downtown?
Y'all had asked for some documentation on some of the design and concepts from a previous study that had been done. Did y'all want to talk over any of that, or are we good at this point?
I
You
think
know-
we were basically, that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah,
What
I
we were
think
talking about.
when I asked for that, just going back and looking at some of the designs, it's very similar to what a design that we had in the past.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then the other question then is, again, to keep the math simple, because I'm not smart enough to be complicated math. If we're going to talk about $1 million budget for downtown improvements, then there's still $1.5 million on the table. You can commit $1.5 million to parks. You can commit $1 million to parks, and that other $500,000 we can add street projects to. It's really whatever appetite the council has for this funding. Some of the things that we've already discussed, and I think we're pretty settled on, Ivory Moore needs a substantial facelift, and so we've been talking about $250,000 for improvements to Ivory Moore. We don't have any inclusive playground features at any of our parks, whether it happens at Ivory Moore or Centennial Park or at City Park. We feel that there needs to be some kind of improvement for recreation for special needs children. Our recommendation is at City Park. We already have the space, we already have the access to that space, and nobody has to cross a major state highway to get there. An inclusive playground would be $100,000 to $150,000, probably in the $125,000 range for an inclusive playground. So 250, if you call it 150, you're at $400,000 there. So you've got $1.1 million left. There are a number of things that we could do. Y'all had mentioned improved lighting at Eddie Moore, which is the baseball complex. From recent experience, I would say if you're going to put UIL standard lighting on a baseball field, you're probably looking about $250,000 per field. But I don't believe we need UIL standard lighting at that ball complex. So we could get some pricing for Little League, Dixie League standard lighting. My guess is it's going to be $100,000, $150,000 per field, but I honestly don't have firm pricing on that. But there's 4 fields. That's $500,000 in lighting in a hurry. And so I'm hesitant to spend money on our ball complex right now because the school has their bond election. They're fixing to redo their entire baseball complex, and they've committed that it would be available to the city in their off-season for us to do youth sports and tournaments. And I don't know that we need to double spend, them spend money on their complex and us spend money on our complex unless we have a coordinated plan. We just don't have a coordinated plan.
So
at this point.
in their bond, the bond that goes for the middle school, will that include the ballparks?
Yes.
That includes the
Yes.
ballparks?
Yeah.
'Cause and so the other one is the
Multi-purpose.
multi-purpose, okay.
We do have the infamous walking trail at Centennial Park that was part of that Parks and Wildlife grant that was not constructed. There have been a number of conversations about staff self-performing that. I'm glad Joe's here because Joe's just incredible at doing those kind of things. But honestly, I'm concerned about the existing staff and the capacity to tackle that construction project and stay up with the maintenance requirements that we have for our limited staff. If we wanted to spend some money on completing that walking trail and contract that out, you're probably looking at $50,000 to $100,000. And you would have a really nice surface walking trail as it was intended in Centennial Park. And then the last thing that we've talked about is a splash pad. There has not been water recreation for the youth of our community. I don't know how long ago it was that the swimming pool was taken out. But the conversation that we've been having in all of our budget, whether it's the operating budget or the capital budget, is yes, we look at the cost, but we also look at the value. What are we bringing to the community? And I recognize streets are used every day, to Mr. Scroggins' point, but any individual street is only used by a portion of the community every day, not the entire community every day. And so quality of life improvements sometimes impact a larger cross-section of your community than an individual street project. I think a 4 to 5 year plan for streets over that period of time, you can get a wide benefit and add value to the community. But any kind of recreation, park improvement that is a quality of life issue is a very quick impact for a large cross-section. Whether it's a playground, whether it's a splash pad, there are quality of life issues that this community does not have that I feel is beneficial to the attractiveness and the desirability to live in this community. And so that's why we've tried to present a whole palette, a whole menu of improvement options for this community, which would include recreation. I've done 5 splash pads. I know the impact they have on a community, but that may not be within our appetite right now. I'm completely okay with that. But we just need some clarity on how much we want to spend on parks, where we want to spend on parks, how much we want to spend on streets, where we want to spend on streets. And that's the nature and the reason of these conversations.
So we
Okay.
had, oh, go ahead.
I wasn't here last meeting, but I did watch it and try to come up to speed so I wouldn't be repeating a lot of things. I, as two, think the splash pad is a great idea, would love to have it. But I also know that we have a lot of street work to be done that's going to take a while. I do know that, and Jamie may be able to tell us a little bit more or have better numbers, that the deal that we have with the university to use the university swimming pool during the summer, I do not feel like that has been advertised, utilized. I've talked to many people that don't know about that program. So we have that there that could be, short-term until we could maybe afford the splash pad after new development and other monies come in. What is the thought on that? That hasn't been used. Would that, more citizens knowing about that, using that, would that satisfy that water sport or activity that that we're lacking in the city right now? When I look at the parks, I see that 3 different parks are going to get an upgrade. Then we are getting a dog park here, which is also going to be something that a lot of the youth will enjoy. That I think are really stepping up the game as far as our youth being more to do.
Sure.
And I don't see us stepping up that there is much to do for maybe our senior citizens or the rest of the population that's not youth. So would it be better to put more of that money downtown, which you said you don't know that you have that many projects,
Yeah.
or let's push that money that we all know we have drainage issues, streets and everything. I just personally think that as much as I would love it, our citizens have cried streets and drainage for years. And I think the bigger chunk that we can take out of that, because we know it's going to cost $60 million if we did them all now. We're looking at several years of getting where we need to be. That's just, since I wasn't here, that's my thought from.
Agreed.
Other thoughts?
I will say, I think the arrangement we had with the university, they still had to pay an entrance fee. It was just a reduced fee. And so it would be probably limited to families that could afford to pay to get entrance
Okay,
to the university.
well then, how much did we spend on that last year? Like 2,500, Okay, prior year, wasn't it
$2,000 to
minimal?
$3,000.
$2,000? I mean, You know, I mean, we could double that amount. We could spend,
I think it would require a conversation with the university, because one of the projects that I've done, when you have, not talking splash pads, I'm talking about water where there's depth to it. The Department of Health, you have a capacity cap that you can only allow so many people inside the facility based on the square footage of water, really not about the depth, but if there's depth to it, there's a cap. And so the university may want to preserve some of the capacity for their students. And if the city does an arrangement where our citizens can go for free, you're going to consume all of the capacity of that facility, and the university may not be
well,
comfortable
and
with
you
that.
know, it doesn't necessarily have to be free. You know, if our citizens, what they used to pay for the city pool was a couple dollars, you know, something like that. And if I am not mistaken, years when that city pool closed, I was not on council, but I came to a lot of council meetings. It was something like 20 people a day went to that pool. I mean, they had the numbers, and it was just, you know. But I do feel, regardless, I do feel that is a program that has been out there that a lot of people don't know about. That can even go. It's not that it's a reduced fee. They just don't know that they could go.
Well, are people that are not associated with the university going to be comfortable going to the university swimming pool?
That's what, when we started that, that's what the problem was. They weren't coming, because I was on council when we did that. And, it just didn't get fanfare. And it was out there. People knew about it, but they just, I don't wanna say it wasn't welcome, but but people weren't comfortable going to the university, having their kids with college kids at the pool.
I can certainly see that, but I do think there is that alternative to having nothing as an activity. But
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Other thoughts?
I expressed mine last week. I mean, I think Ivory Moore, the inclusive park, and then also spending for the lighting, the 100,000 down for the baseball park. That leaves us with $1 million, right? And I do believe that I would love to have again a splash pad, but not at this moment. I think we need to really push downtown to be bringing in sales tax, as well as I think we need to spend money on the streets. If we could I don't know, that's where my dilemma is right now, is if we take that $1 million and say we're going to put it in the streets for this next year, do we have the capacity to get there? Or do we even have to spend that $1 million this year?
You don't have to. We don't have to issue the funding right now. You could defer how much you issued right now and save some of that capacity for next year's issuance once you've got the designs done. We could perform design now and issue the construction dollars in the next round of funding. Our uncertainty is twofold. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen with valuations over next year.
Right.
And we don't know what's going to happen with interest rates between now and next year. Interest rates are at historic lows for us right now. And so deferring projects typically increases the cost, and there's the interest rate risk. I just don't know how to forecast that.
Yeah,
But-
I totally understand that. I've said my piece.
I do have one question, and I'm asking this in case it changes something. as I was watching the last meeting, you said the animal shelter was $250 a square foot. It is
That's a current
A current
estimate from
estimate.
a contractor that's building one right now.
My question is, did that include concrete runs and the whole thing, not just the building? Okay.
I understand the street drainage problem. Uh, and I also understand the water recreation. And speaking as someone that talks to a lot of people in the community every day, all day, and hearing what they're saying, I get it from both ends, drainage, I get it from water recreation. Got it this weekend. Water recreation, as far as the youth in this town, is very important. It's something that it hasn't been visited in a long time. We shut the pool down when I was on council. Bob Mills was over the pool. We knew he had an issue. We had to do what we had to do. This is an opportunity for us to get water recreation back on and rolling. We're gonna have street problems. We're gonna have drainage problems until we spend a big chunk of change. It's just simple as that. $1 million is not gonna fix that problem, y'all. That's just point blank. We have an opportunity now to at least get that done and behind us, and we want to revisit that again. That's my piece.
What you thinking, Teddy?
I like the idea of the splash pad. I'm a long-time swimming pool person here and grew up in Commerce and everything. I don't have the advantage of hearing from the community in the role that Tony plays here, so I'd like the idea of the water park.
I like the idea of a no-charge opportunity with water. And as soon as possible, I think it would be a real advantage, especially with our new dog park right by it. I like it.
I am deliriously happy to execute whatever plans you approve.
We have differences of opinion.
I'm gonna shoot it out there. I'm like. Not dislike, it's all good too. The Ivory improvement, the inclusive park, splash pad, and, the lights, yeah.
I don't know that I've got the budget to do the lights and splash pad.
No.
The lights and everything.
Um,
Those 3 projects.
If there's some funding remaining, I would probably allocate it to the walking trail. We get a lot of feedback about that. And depending on how much budget we have, we can do a crushed rock surface or we could do a concrete surface. There's a huge gap in budget for those different approaches. And so I would recommend keeping that walking trail in our back pocket and see where the funding shakes out.
Did we come to a decision on the streets? I thought that we did maintenance and,
We already did, yeah.
All I know is that next week on the 21st, we have to formally adopt whatever our plan is going to be. And so,
I think we're all pussyfooting around here. We've got to make a decision tonight so that we can approve it next week. We've got to come up with a decision. Are we going to go with the splash pad or not? I mean, mine is not this year.
Mine is now.
You heard my 3 nods.
would say somebody make a motion and somebody second, and let's vote this sucker.
I didn't know we could,
Did we write it, is it workshop only?
No,
we
workshop.
can't,
Okay.
But
we
it's
can't do
just so
that.
that we'll know
This
what
is
it's gonna be.
consensus night.
All right.
I mean, I think we need to come up with a consensus.
Yeah.
And if our consensus is that we're going to do the splash pad, I mean, I'm not for it at all. But if the
Nor am I.
But if the consensus is that we're gonna go for it, then
But,
we'll
I
know
mean, if
by
that's
next week.
consensus, I will be behind the council and
What we do.
support
I
city
agree too.
manager and everything, but I wanna be on the record, I'm not for it, not because I don't think it would be a great thing, I just think there's other needs.
I say the same, yeah. But I will, next week, if that's what our consensus is, we'll go with it and I'll support that. It's just, just not this year for that splash
And y'all will
pad.
still be my friends.
Oh, I
Yeah.
still love y'all to bit.
I'll just break your other arm.
That's
Yeah.
right. I'm right.
I'm working on this one over here, I got
That's
two.
why I put it in there.
Well, then, based on that feedback, next week, the CIP that we will put in front of y'all for a vote will be 1.5 million for parks, 1 million for downtown, and then the library and the streets and the animal shelter.
Those 3 projects.
Those projects, and at this point, the scope for the animal shelter is scope and size to serve our community. It would be designed for expansion, and should the county want some additional capacity, the county can contribute to the expansion of that project.
When you say for our community, does that mean we are going to drop the county and this is going to be just strictly a city shelter?
If the county wants capacity within our shelter, which is the arrangement we have with them right now, but they want to renegotiate that arrangement, and we are more than willing to renegotiate that arrangement with them. If they want capacity in our shelter,
They're gonna pay for it.
they need to contribute to that
That
capacity.
square footage, that's 30% or 40% or whatever it is?
Whatever they decide they want to go.
Well, if you just use 100 animals, and we learned last week that 40% of that 100 animals is county. That's 2/3 of our 60. So we gotta have 2/3 more structure to handle.
The budget,
40 more-
the budget we have right
40%
now,
more.
the budget we have right now would develop, I think, what was it, 40 beds? And we feel confident that we have 40 now. We have 30 right now. The budget we've put together would, 40 beds, 40 kennels, would be the approximate size. So that serves our community and allows for some growth. We could continue to provide the same level of service to the county, but we don't feel that what they contribute adequately represents the volume that comes in. If they wanted more capacity than what the 40 beds would be, then they would have to foot the cost of the expanded larger building.
I agree.
Are we asking them to foot any of the building, I mean, of the shelter of the 40% that they take right now?
What
And is that a year-to-year contract or?
the agreement we have right now is $70,000 a year, $70,000 a year, and we will accept animals from county residents. But in practice, what that has turned into is they want our animal control officer to respond out into the county. If they're available, we have done that for them, but only if we have availability. In recent times, we have not had availability, we did not respond, and they communicated displeasure. And so the conversation we've had with them recently is that if they want guaranteed response, that has to be factored into the contribution they make. But that's an operating cost issue, so many dollars per year to cover operating costs. We're now talking capital cost and capacity of the building. If we're gonna build a new building and they wanna reserve capacity in that, they have to bring dollars to the table. And to, I think Mr. Scroggins' point was very well made, we're only gonna design a shelter that meets our needs, but we will design it in a way that it can be easily expanded. And should they or somebody want to expand that facility, it can be done, but at that point, they'd have to put dollars on the table.
I know you will think of this, but as the negotiations occur, or if they do, if they are asking us to pick up animals in the county, then not only is that an employee, but also vehicle usage.
Yeah. Duly noted.
What else?
I have what I need to be ready for next week's meeting. So any other comments or questions as we move on?
If you have what you need, we're ready for next week.
Which is at 5:30.
Yes.
I'm getting close.
Working
up to it.
Reminder to Teddy's point, next week's meeting starts at 5:30.
At 5:30 instead of 6. It is now 7:21, and I call this meeting adjourned.
I was gonna say, 'cause, well, I put my glasses on and I went, still can't see it.